The forest remembers what people forget. In the heart of Oregon's wilderness, where pine trees tower above the mist and silence clings like a second skin, a lonely cabin stands. Its roof is sagging. Its walls are swallowed by moss. The windows, broken long ago, stare like hollow eyes into the woods. For years, this place was left to rot, a relic of a life that once pulsed with laughter and family warmth. But in 2006, a group of hikers stumbled upon the ruin and opened a door into one of the most haunting mysteries of modern times. Inside that decayed cabin, they found more than dust and decay. They found signs of a tragedy and maggots that revealed the unthinkable. This story begins a decade earlier, in 1996, when an American family made a choice that would ultimately take them far from the rhythms of society, deep into isolation, and, eventually, into silence. Mark Johnson, his wife Sarah, and their two children, Emily and Jake, left behind the noise of city streets and the comforts of suburban life to embrace what they called freedom, an off-grid existence in the Oregon wilderness. At first, their friends and relatives thought it was noble. Who wouldn't admire a family trying to reconnect with nature, live by their own hands, and step away from the grind of bills, traffic, and modern chaos? But admiration turned to unease as weeks turned into months, and months into years, with no letters, no visits, no calls. By the time it was year 2006, most people who had once known the Johnsons had given up hope of ever hearing from them again. That is, until the discovery of the cabin forced everyone to ask the question, what really happened out here? To understand, we need to go back to the beginning. Mark Johnson was a man in his late 30s with rough hands and restless eyes. He had worked odd jobs in Oregon, from carpentry to seasonal farm work, and he dreamed of a life without bosses, without rent, without the constant pressure of money. Sarah, his wife, was quieter, a woman with a strong will and a fierce devotion to her children. She loved books, wrote in journals, and believed modern life was slowly poisoning families. Together, they made a choice: to raise Emily, age 10, and Jake, age 7, in the woods away from television, traffic, and what they called the sickness of the world. They sold what little they had, packed supplies, and disappeared into Oregon's dense forests. Their destination, a small plot of land Mark had inherited from his uncle. The land was rugged, thick with evergreens, and hours away from the nearest town. On it sat a hand-built cabin, barely large enough for a family of 4, but sturdy enough to keep out the rain and snow. The Johnsons embraced the off-grid life. They grew vegetables, hunted deer and rabbits, and fished in nearby streams. Sarah homeschooled Emily and Jake by candlelight. Neighbors in distant homesteads recalled seeing the family once in a while, hiking to town for supplies or trading for tools. But as the months passed, their visits grew less frequent. Soon they stopped altogether. By 1997, friends who had once received letters heard nothing. By 1998, relatives stopped expecting phone calls. And by 2000, the Johnsons were, for all intents and purposes, gone. In small Oregon communities, silence breeds stories. Some whispered that the Johnsons had decided to vanish completely, building a new life even deeper in the woods, hidden from prying eyes. Others speculated that they had been caught in an accident, a forest fire, a hunting mishap, or a brutal winter storm. But darker theories spread, too. Locals spoke of strange arguments Mark had with a nearby landowner about property lines and hunting rights. There were rumors of illegal logging, of meth labs hidden in the forests, of strangers with guns spotted near back roads. Could the Johnsons have crossed paths with the wrong people? And then there were the reports, faint but unsettling, from neighbors who claimed they heard strange noises near the Johnson cabin in late 1996. Screams, gunshots, or something harder to describe. At the time, no one investigated. People respected boundaries in the wilderness. You didn't pry. You didn't trespass. And so, whatever happened out there remained hidden. By the late 1990s, the Johnson family was a ghost story. No one had seen them in years. Friends who once admired their choice to go off-grid began to regret not checking in. Sarah's sister told reporters years later that she tried to visit in 1999 but found the road washed out and gave up. Others assumed the family had moved on. But the truth was far stranger, and it lay waiting in that cabin. On a cool autumn day in 2006, 10 years after the Johnsons first vanished, a group of hikers exploring an overgrown trail stumbled upon a sagging roof half hidden by trees. They thought they had found an abandoned hunting shack. Curious, they pushed open the creaking door. Inside, the air was heavy, stale, and foul. The cabin was littered with the remnants of a life frozen in time. Children's drawings on the walls, broken furniture, rusted cans, torn clothing. It was as if the family had walked out one day and never returned. But then the hikers noticed something that stopped them cold. In corners of the cabin, in what had once been the family's bedroom, lay clusters of maggots. The insects had long since died, their husks scattered among the debris, but their presence told investigators everything they needed to know. Something had once decayed here. Something or someone. When authorities were called to the scene, they brought in forensic entomologists, scientists who study insects to understand crime scenes. What they discovered was chilling. The life cycles of the maggots, preserved in records and samples, suggested that decomposition had occurred in the cabin many years earlier, likely in the late 1990s. The Johnsons hadn't simply walked away. They had perished here. Investigators scoured the site. They found fragments of bone too small to confirm identities. They found personal belongings, Sarah's journal, Mark's tools, Emily's handmade doll, Jake's wooden toy truck. These items painted a picture of a family living in fear. Pages of Sarah's journal spoke of strange men near the cabin, and of her children waking at night, terrified by noises outside. She wrote of Mark arguing with someone in the woods, and of her growing dread that isolation had not protected them, but trapped them. The maggots, in their own way, had become witnesses. They told investigators that bodies had decomposed in that cabin years earlier. But without intact remains, police could not confirm the family's fate. Were they murdered? Did Mark, driven by stress and paranoia, harm his own family before taking his life? Or had an outsider attacked them and left their remains to the insects? Theories multiplied. Some detectives leaned toward foul play, citing the journal entries and the disputes with neighbors. Others suspected a crime of desperation, a family pushed beyond the limits of survival, turning on one another. But one thing was clear. The Johnsons had not simply left. Something terrible had happened in that cabin. For the local community, the discovery was devastating. Search parties had once combed the forests, hoping to find the Johnsons alive. Now it seemed they had been dead all along, just a few miles from where people had once looked. The cabin became infamous, a symbol of both freedom and fragility, a reminder that living off the grid could mean living beyond help. And yet, the mystery did not end there. Because in the wreckage of that cabin, alongside the maggots, investigators found something else, Sarah's journals. And those journals would reveal fears, suspicions, and secrets that deepened the mystery rather than solved it. The journals Sarah Johnson left behind were more than scraps of paper. They were the inner voice of a mother living in fear, a woman who tried to balance her husband's dream of freedom with her children's need for safety. Each entry revealed fragments of their lives in the wilderness. She described mornings when the family rose with the sun, gathering berries or chopping wood. She described evenings when the children fell asleep by the fire, listening to the sounds of coyotes echo through the trees. At first, the pages radiated hope. But as months passed, the tone shifted. Sarah began to write about strangers she thought were watching the cabin. She wrote about arguments Mark had with men she did not recognize. She mentioned hearing footsteps outside late at night and seeing shadows flicker past the windows. The most disturbing passages spoke of her fear that someone wanted them gone. In one entry, she wrote, "Mark says we are safe here, but I feel the walls closing in. Emily cries in her sleep. Jake wakes screaming. I don't know if we can last." These journals became crucial evidence. They suggested the Johnsons were not simply victims of nature, but of something far more sinister. And yet, they also left room for a darker possibility, that fear itself had consumed them, leading to tragedy from within. While Sarah's words painted an emotional picture, It was the maggots that told the scientific one. Entomologists examined samples, noting the stages of insect life cycles preserved in the decayed remains of the cabin. By reconstructing the timeline, they concluded that bodies had decomposed there roughly a decade earlier, aligning with the family's disappearance in 1996. The insects provided a grim but vital clock. Their presence meant the family had not wandered off, had not relocated to another hidden settlement. They had died in or near that cabin. Forensic specialists explained to reporters how flies are among the first witnesses to death, laying eggs within hours. From those eggs come larvae, maggots, whose growth can reveal when death occurred. To investigators, the message was clear. Decomposition had happened here, and it had happened long ago. But the maggots could not say who had caused the deaths. They could not reveal whether the Johnsons were murdered, whether they fell victim to starvation and sickness, or whether violence erupted from within the family itself. With so few answers, speculation exploded. Locals revisited rumors of land disputes. Had Mark clashed with someone over boundaries or hunting rights? Could revenge have driven a neighbor to violence? Others suggested the family had stumbled across criminal activity, illegal logging, poaching, or drug operations hidden in the woods, and paid the price for seeing too much. Still others whispered about Mark himself. Was he a loving father pushed beyond the breaking point, or a man who turned dangerous in isolation? His temper, noted by a few acquaintances, and Sarah's fearful journal entries raised disturbing possibilities. Could the tragedy have been a murder-suicide? Or did an unknown intruder descend upon the cabin, carrying out an attack no one witnessed? The theories multiplied, but none could be proven. When news of the discovery broke in 2006, the Johnsons' disappearance shifted from a quiet local mystery to a story that fascinated the public. Reporters camped outside the sheriff's office. True crime enthusiasts filled forums with speculation. Television specials asked whether the Oregon wilderness hid a killer still at large. For the community, the impact was personal. People who once admired the Johnsons' choice to live off-grid now questioned it. Parents told their children not to wander too far into the forest. Hunters reported feeling uneasy walking past the decayed cabin. What was once a symbol of independence had become a monument to fragility. Sarah's family, still alive and grieving, demanded answers. They pleaded for further investigation, for forensic testing of every scrap of evidence. But with little more than bones, journals, and maggots, the truth remained out of reach. By 2006, the case was officially considered a cold case. But cold did not mean forgotten. Detectives revisited old leads, re-interviewed neighbors, and submitted evidence to new forensic labs. The journals were preserved, studied for handwriting clues, and compared with witness statements. Technology had advanced since the 1990s. DNA analysis was more precise. Trace evidence could be tested in ways once impossible. Investigators searched for genetic material on clothing and furniture, hoping for a breakthrough. But the decay of the cabin had destroyed much. Moisture, insects, and time had erased critical traces. Still, the reinvestigation uncovered patterns. Multiple locals admitted hearing screams near the Johnson land in late 1996. Others remembered seeing unfamiliar vehicles on remote logging roads. These recollections, while not hard evidence, suggested the Johnsons had not been alone in their final days. The Johnson case also sparked broader questions about off-grid living. To many, the lifestyle symbolized freedom. The ability to live by your own hands, answer to no one, and carve out a life in nature. But freedom came with risk. Isolation meant there were no neighbors to call for help, no police to arrive quickly, no community to intervene when things went wrong. Experts interviewed for documentaries pointed out that off-grid families often faced hidden dangers, untreated medical issues, harsh winters, wildlife encounters, and, in rare cases, threats from other people. For the Johnsons, isolation became both their sanctuary and their prison. Psychologists who studied Sarah's journals saw signs of growing paranoia. Was it justified fear of real threats, or the slow unraveling of nerves in a family cut off from society? Isolation can sharpen tensions. Without outside contact, arguments intensify. Small fears grow large. The line between perception and reality blurs. Emily and Jake, children caught in the middle, appeared in the journals as restless and afraid. Sarah wrote of their nightmares, their unease, and her guilt at raising them in a place that no longer felt safe. Her words painted the picture of a family under siege, whether from the outside world or from their own unraveling minds. The Johnsons were not the only ones to vanish in America's wilderness. In the 1990s, several families and individuals disappeared in remote areas of Oregon and Washington. Some were found, victims of accidents or exposure. Others remain missing to this day. The Johnson case became part of this larger pattern, fueling theories of predators lurking in the woods or coincidences too dark to ignore. Today, nearly 3 decades later, the Johnson family remains a mystery. Their cabin still stands, collapsing deeper into the earth, a silent witness to whatever unfolded there. The maggots that once swarmed its floors have long since died, but the questions they raise still crawl through the case. What happened to Mark, Sarah, Emily, and Jake? Were they silenced by outsiders, undone by isolation, or consumed by fear that turned deadly? The truth remains buried in those woods. But their story endures, a reminder that the line between freedom and danger is thin, and that even the strongest families can vanish when cut off from the world. If you followed this far, you know the Johnson story is not just about one family. It's about the risks we take when we seek solitude, the mysteries nature holds, and the shadows that linger when answers never come. The cabin is still there, waiting for someone to find the clue that was missed, waiting for the truth to come to light. Until then, the Johnsons remain part of Oregon's darkest cold case. If you found this story compelling, share it with others who follow true crime mysteries. Leave your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Could the truth of the Johnson family still be uncovered? And what do you believe happened in those final silent days of 1996? Make sure to subscribe to this channel for more cinematic true crime stories, where every mystery has a voice and every silence deserves to be broken.